Welcome to the Dumb Idea Podcast Show with Mike and Alex. We thank you for joining us as we have a couple of beers and a cigar and talk about what's going on in our lives. Grab an adult beverage and a smoke and settle in with us. Please like, subscribe, and comment on each show so we can hear whether you agree or disagree with our take on things. Listen wherever your favorite podcasts are and at www.dumbideapodcast.com. All right, so in our last episode, we got into some issues with government. The original purpose of that show was to kind of say, hey, you know, as a show or just in our own opinions, this is where we stand. There might be some disagreements here or there, but basically kind of say, hey, look, this is where we're coming from. This is why we think the parties left us. We didn't leave the parties. However, we really didn't get down that path. We kind of started talking about specific instances.
It went off the rails.
A little bit. Yeah, it definitely. Don't get me wrong. I hope it was an entertaining show.
Yeah.
But hopefully this show is more of what the last show should have been. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to just list the main topics that people kind of vote on or vote for or against. And we're just going to talk about them as far as where we stand and where we think a new middle party could be. Even though we know there's no shot that a middle party or another party is going to exist. But I know like up in New Hampshire, the Libertarians kind of took over the Republican Party there.
Yeah, there was a movement. I forget the guy's name. He wrote a book. He's a libertarian. Yeah. And that was kind of their idea, was to everyone go to New Hampshire and kind of make that like the toehold of...
Well, essentially, because I guess New Hampshire only... It has under 1 million people that live there, I believe. So they said, look, they looked at 3 states. I believe it was Wyoming, New Hampshire, and I want to say it was West Virginia. Mm-hmm. And they pretty much said, we want to get as many people as we can that believe in this libertarian policy or policies that we believe in, and we're all going to move to this state. And essentially infiltrate one of the parties. Now, they still run as Republicans or Democrats, mm-hmm. but they believe in the libertarian policies.
Right.
And some of you might have noticed that a state senator there actually wants to put official secession on a ballot. So everyone thinks that Texas would be the state to kind of do something outlandish like this, but it's actually New Hampshire that probably has the more chances than any to do this. But that essentially, though, that's how the infiltration of the parties would work. And you definitely kind of saw this with the Tea Party and how it infiltrated the Republicans.
Yeah, the Tea Party caucus kind of became the face of the Republican Party.
I think that was the Freedom Party now.
Yeah, they have the Freedom Caucus.
Yeah, and now they're doing like the America First plan is now like the evolution of that a little bit, and the Libertarians are getting more involved in the Republican Party because I think after Gary Johnson ran, and Ron Paul ran. I think the Libertarians realized, look, yeah, they've never won an election for a state office or higher, mm-hmm. When there was a Republican and Democrat running. Now they've won somewhere it's been just Libertarian versus Republican or Democrat.
Right.
They've won some of those 50-50 battles, but they've never won a 3-way contest. And I think they finally realized, hey, look, if we want to inject libertarian policies in some of these places, we're going to have to run as libertarian Republicans or libertarian Democrats. We're not going to be able to run as a libertarian party.
Right.
And I think that's probably the best common sense way of going about this. But for us, we might not be even too far libertarian, but we're going to go down these major topics. We've got climate and energy, healthcare, finance and budget, jobs/military industrial complex, abortion, guns/Second Amendment, education, regulation /red tape, and the food industry. those will be our main topics. I don't really think I'm missing any that would people would vote for or against there.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything else that's really going to be maybe you might want to throw Israel in there. That's some people get fired up about that, but we'll see if we have time and try not to.
I'll put it on the list.
Yeah, try not to go off the rails.
Well, so I'll start. Climate and energy. All right. I'm a person who wants all options on the table. I think we should be doing coal when coal is the most reasonable to do. Mm-hmm. Nuclear should be done as well. Nuclear's got a horrible name ever since Chernobyl happened, but I think nuclear and also nuclear waste is also a thing that needs to be dealt with. But then there's also solar, wind, hydro, methane from cow poop and landfills. You can get energy through that. I think there's a lot of ways to skin this cat, and I think people are on either side. I think Republicans are so focused on keeping coal, natural gas, and oil. Those are their big three, and then the Democrats want wind, solar, hydro, and the landfill methane. Although I don't know if they're even a big fan of methane because of the CO2 it puts out. But
and the nuclear side, well, the conspiracy theorist in me wants to say that all the anti-nuclear stuff was probably funded by the coal industry to begin with. That's completely unresearched. That's just the conspiracy theorist in me, but it would kind of make sense. But I've always been the type where use the source of energy, like don't write one off just because it doesn't fall within your political dogma. So if solar makes sense, then use solar. If wind makes sense, then use wind. Hydro. The hydroelectric power plant's been around for a very, very long time.
They use them a lot in Europe.
Yeah. And even if you go up, so locally, the Conowingo Dam, that's a hydroelectric power plant. It's owned by Exelon. Yep. You go up onto the, looking up in upstate New York, there are hydroelectric power plants up there. So there are plenty of examples of the Hoover Dam. There's another one.
That's a big one.
Where it's been used. It's been used for a very long time. It's very safe. It's very clean. Yep. Environmental people might go and say, oh, but, how can the salmon swim up the stream with the dam there? So then they build fish elevators, and they actually work. Mm-hmm. There's ways around it. But I would never go and say, let's completely eliminate a source of energy just because we don't like it anymore.
Right.
Because it's not cool. And then, some of the things, like when Biden came in, he immediately canceled the Keystone Pipeline. Now, when we need water, we don't drive to the store and buy the water we need as we need it. There's a pipe that comes to the house because the most efficient way to move liquids is through pipes. So to me, that was just a big virtue signal, and where let's leave that in place because we're still using these products. So let's transport them as efficiently as we can.
Never mind the fact, if you ever look at the map of pipeline in this country, having that one additional pipeline wasn't going to have the negative impact people thought it would be. And in fact, it wasn't that they weren't going to transport that oil. They're going to transport it, but by train.
Right.
And it's actually more dangerous to transport it by train than by pipeline.
Yeah.
But no one wanted to talk about that.
It's the safest way to transport. Another safe way to transport fluids, bulk fluids like that, is by ship. It's probably the most green way to transport any item.
Right.
But we have legislation on the books that prevents shipping. It's the Jones Act. So essentially it has to be an American manufactured ship, American crewed, American flagged, which drives the cost way up. So it's cheaper to transport it by truck when we could be using ships. So it kind of falls in that energy sector because of, transporting goods and services takes energy. So here we are. We have just a policy, just a rule on the books that's preventing this from happening. It was supposed to be a boon to American shipping, but there is no American shipping. It's too expensive to ship things with American crews. So we're wasting money and energy just because of a rule we made up.
By the way, for anyone who wants to question that, what you just said, when you go on a cruise, Royal Caribbean, Carnival, just look at the name tags and see how many say they're from the USA.
Yeah, 0.
Other than maybe the entertainers.
Yeah.
The cabin crew, the kitchen crew, none of them are from the United States.
Yep.
And just like people on these ships, the tankers and everything, none of them are from the U.S.
No.
And if there may be a few.
Yeah.
But no.
And if you look in the stern of the ship, it'll say where the ship is registered.
Sure.
You'll see a lot of Nassau.
Panama.
I think Royal Caribbean's all Nassau. Panama.
Yeah, Panama's big. Seychelles.
Yep. Moldova, I think.
Yeah.
Liberia, because it's cheaper to register the ships there.
Yep.
So we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot with just a rule that was a handout to shipping. And initially it was supposed to protect commerce during wartime and this and that, but it's kind of, it's no longer really relevant. Well, and it's hurting us overall.
And let's tackle the main environmental issues, right? Everyone's worried about CO2, right? And they said, well, we need better gas mileage in cars and trucks and all these coal plants, and they're horrible. Everything is horrible for the environment. The one industry that the U.S. is never going to tackle, and frankly the world is not going to tackle, and it's the biggest polluter in the world, is the agriculture industry. Mm-hmm. Straight up. I believe it causes 70% of the pollution in the world. So we're literally focusing on the drop in the bucket. And which, don't get me wrong, I think that's fine. But if you're not going to tackle the thing that causes the most pollution in this world, what are you doing?
Yeah.
If you're not going to tackle agricultural runoff, the methane from all these beef plants. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, I know it sounds stupid, but these cows poop a lot.
They fart.
And there is a lot of methane that comes out of it. And methane is a harmful gas, which is why a lot of some landfills, which I don't understand why they all don't do this, but they recapture the methane to create energy.
Yeah.
In fact, auto plants try to do this.
Yep.
Where they can make the auto plant carbon neutral because they capture the CO2 and the methane from these landfills, which is why sometimes you go by an old landfill that's been filled in and you see those white PVC pipes coming out of it. Well, they can connect to it. Yeah. And they can create energy.
Well, and prisons will run off of it.
Sure.
They run all kinds of things off of it. It's cool.
And I think a lot of who they call climate deniers, I think part of the reason why they're like, look, you're going to put the coal miner out of work, but you're not going to address the major cause of pollution in this world. Yeah. And oh, by the way, all these rich people are still buying oceanfront property. Yeah. Well, the oceans are supposed to New York City's supposed to be underwater at some point.
Was it supposed to be underwater like a couple years ago?
Sure, something like that. But the richest people are still buying it up. Yeah. Now look, it's kind of beside the point, but I guess my point is this: unless you are willing to take on the largest polluters on this earth, you really think the dude who has his diesel Chevy pickup really gives 2 cents about what you think? Yeah. Like the hypocrisy there is crazy.
Yeah, you're not going to change his mind. And then, getting into the answer, well, we'll just build electric cars. Well, what do an electric car is a coal-powered car. Right. So the electric bicycle that the hipster rides in Brooklyn, it's a coal-powered bicycle.
Well, it's coal, nuclear. It's natural gas. Yeah. Something has to produce that electricity that you're plugging into your house.
Yeah. It doesn't come from nowhere. Yeah. So just because you're not...
It's run by wind. Yeah. Even though only, 10% of this country's energy is produced by wind?
I think that's being really generous, too.
All right.
So, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if you're doing it, if you're doing it because you know, if you're going to go and buy the electric car because you think that, you know, hey, it's a lot faster. It's pretty much on-demand power. It's cooler. You don't have to put gas in it. Like, that's some cool stuff, right? But don't trick yourself into thinking that you're doing something, that you're carbon neutral now. I guarantee you that you're not. When you consider where that power source is coming, where that power is coming from, and then everything it took to assemble that vehicle and bring it here.
Yeah.
So,
well, never mind the fact no one wants to address the battery issues.
Yeah.
What are you going to do when these batteries run out?
Right.
Like technically, we've had hybrids for a while, right? And now on a Prius, you can swap out the batteries pretty efficiently and cost effectively, and they can refurbish those batteries. Tesla doesn't have any kind of plans for that.
No.
Like, what are you going to do?
And we've all had that cell phone we probably held on to for a little bit too long, and where when we first bought it, it stayed charged for 2 days, and now you're lucky to get 3 hours out of it off a full charge. So that's all well and good with your cell phone, but what happens when you're sitting on the side of the road?
Now, look, at some point, if someone, I know there was a study a while back, but I don't think it was considered very accurate, that said that the electric car, and a Tesla, was caused less emissions, and that was through the production and also the saved gas and all this other stuff, and I think they said it was like $20,000 more efficient or something. I don't know, but I don't think it was done so long ago. I don't even remember the study, and I think it was debunked.
Yeah,
like saying, well, hold on a minute, you didn't factor in what it costs to mine the materials that went into the battery,
right, and ship it somewhere.
Right. You didn't factor in all of that.
And these materials aren't being mined in places that are using environmentally friendly methods either.
No.
Yeah. So,
by the way, no one's even talking about graphene as a battery.
Yeah.
Graphene is a much better battery, but the battery industry is like, oh hell no, you're not getting into that. If anyone has time, do a YouTube search for graphene battery.
Okay.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, this one guy stabbed one and nothing happened.
Oh, wow.
Whereas if you stab a lithium ion, it will explode.
Oh.
It's dangerous as shit.
Yeah.
But nobody will listen to the people that are doing it because the battery industry and the power and the energy industry don't want it.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Makes sense. So what do we got next on that?
So climate, where do you think, let's just talk about, where do you think we stand on climate and energy?
So, for me,
Yeah.
and I think we're probably on the same page, is neither one of us is a climate denier.
No.
However, I'm of the opinion that we should use the best, most efficient energy source that's available.
Sure.
If that's natural gas, it's natural gas. But let's not go and say we're not going to use. I'm not going to be the type, like, if I can put solar panels on my house,
Yep.
and run my house completely off solar,
Yep.
I would do it. You know, and I'm not talking about one of these companies that you lease your roof space and then you pay them. No. Put solar panels on top of my house and power everything with solar. I'm down.
Well, I'm down with like a regional aspect.
Yeah.
Like in Arizona, throw up that solar.
Yeah.
The Midwest, throw up those wind turbines.
Yep.
On the East Coast, maybe we got to use nuclear.
Yeah.
You know, I'm fine with all that.
Yeah. And I'm also not anti-fossil fuel either.
No, I'm not either. I think fossil fuels have a place.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just think that, I noticed when you said climate denier, do I think all of this climate change is man-made? My hard answer is no.
Yeah.
I think some of it is. But I also think that we don't have a whole lot of data going back far enough for this planet to let us know the ebbs and flows of the temperature of this planet.
Right.
I think, I mean, we had an ice age. We had, what's the opposite of an ice age? The
warm age,
super hot age, whatever they want to call that. We've had different ebbs and flows, and you know, yes, I know oceans will rise when the planet gets hot. The oceans rise because it melts the polar ice caps. But then what that does is it cools the oceans, which then ends up cooling the planet, which then leads to a reversal of the heat.
Yeah.
So that's how you can go from an ice age to a heat age. We're going to call it heat age.
Heat age. Yeah.
By the way,
we're climate scientists.
Dumb Idea Podcast. Don't believe anything we're saying. This is scientific research, just so you know. But there is ebbs and flows with the temperature of the planet. There always have been. And for us to say that, us as humans have caused this solely, I don't think is a proper way to put it. But I also think that we have played our part in this.
Right.
So for me, I mean, I'm kind of in the left camp in saying that humans are a part of it. We should do whatever we can to mitigate it. But at the same time, I'm also on the right saying, hey, look, this planet is super old.
Yeah.
And we don't have all the data to say that it's us completely.
Right. And
so,
and also, like, regardless of whether it is, I think we should be stewards of the environment.
Absolutely.
And take care of what we have. Because I don't see how, like, having clean air to breathe and clean water to drink and nice places to go and visit and pristine mountains and all the beautiful places that the world has to offer, that's not a left-right issue.
No.
Like, I don't think anyone wants to live near, a factory belching smoke out of it. That's just, I mean, maybe some people do. I can't speak for everyone. But, and we've made unbelievable progress. A vehicle manufactured today produces less carbon emissions running at 65 miles per hour than a vehicle produced in 1950 does shut off and sitting.
Right.
So let's look at the progress we made and continue to make that progress. But to go and say we're just not going to use this anymore, and it's ridiculous and it's unrealistic.
Right. So I think we would get some people from both the left and the right that would agree with us.
Mm-hmm. And a whole lot of hate.
Oh, lots of hate. Lots of hate. But we'll go on from there. All right. Next one, another big one. Then we'll get into some minor ones. But the next big one is healthcare. And I think this is going to surprise a lot of people where we probably stand. I think we're probably in the same boat. For me, and this will actually touch on the next one with finance and budget, and in the last episode I said, look, I'm in favor of government when government is done right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in favor of single payer if single payer is done correctly. In fact, I'd be in favor of expanding Medicare as a single payer system. But certain things would have to change for me with Medicare. One of which is currently the Medicare system cannot negotiate drug prices with the pharmaceutical companies. Mm-hmm. Private insurance can. Private insurance says, we're only going to pay you X amount of dollars for this prescription when one of our people needs it.
Mm-hmm. And
the person that buys into that health insurance pays their copay of like $3, $5, $10, $20, whatever it is for that drug.
Yeah.
But that's negotiated between the insurer that you're paying into and the pharmaceutical company.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's a pharmacy benefit manager in between there somewhere. But essentially, the problem with Medicare and probably Medicaid is that they're not allowed per Congress to negotiate drug prices with those pharmaceutical
So it's just
companies.
a rule we made up. Just like the Jones Act.
Pretty much. And the pharmaceutical company pretty much says, well, you guys, the government who's, by the way, Medicare is one of the biggest purchasers of drugs, pharmaceuticals in this country, either through separate Medicare Advantage plans or whatever they want to call it, or Medicare or Medicaid. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the biggest drug buyers. And the pharmaceutical companies say, well, we can't have you negotiating because if you do that and we lower our revenue, then we won't be able to produce new drugs. We won't have the money for research and development of new drugs, which is completely BS.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe that if someone comes and gets an FDA approved drug, I believe the patent is 20 years.
Yeah, it's
before anybody can even compete with them.
Yep.
Like if you let's say you're going through cancer treatments and your white blood count goes way down low, and there's a drug called Neulasta, which is can be used as every other week injection to raise your white blood count after chemo. Okay, the shot, even negotiated from Blue Cross Blue Shield, that single shot was $5,000. $5,000. Now, most cancer patients that have health insurance probably aren't even paying that because their deductible is already done by that point. Once you get to that level of the treatment, your deductible is gone. Your catastrophic is kicked in. Mm-hmm. But Medicare, let's say Medicare is covering your new Lasta shot.
They still pay still pay the full tilt boogie.
They're not paying $5,000. Mm-hmm. That's the insurance negotiated rate. They're probably paying $13,000.
Wow,
$13,000 versus the $5,000 they'll take from the insurance company.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because you look at this, and a lot of the arguments I hear about this are from the right, but isn't that the whole party of the free market and all this other stuff? So you're not allowing Medicare to act as, any other transaction you negotiate. If I'm going to pay you to put a new roof on my house, you can go and quote me a price and say, I don't feel like paying $8,000. Can you do it for $55,000? And you say, no, I'm not doing it for $55,000. Okay, how about $67,000? You're like, all right, deal. I'll do it. So
my question, why put the screws to the U.S.?
Yeah.
Canada's a wealthy country, but Canada has a single-payer healthcare program, and Canada's allowed to negotiate drug prices, which is why some senior citizens go over the border to get their drugs. Mm-hmm. They get their pharmaceutical, because I think a U.S. doctor can prescribe, or maybe they have a Canadian doctor do the prescription once they go. But they literally have bus tours that go over the border for senior citizens. They make a day, let's just make a day trip out of it.
Play some slots, get some dope,
right? and they get some drugs and they come back.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's still cheaper for them to pay for that trip. Like the cost difference is still cost effective for them to pay for that trip going over the border, get enough of their supply of their drugs, and coming back than it is just to get the drugs from CVS down the road.
Yeah.
You got to be kidding me with this garbage. Yeah. Like, common sense is out the window with that.
Right.
So I guess my point, if we're going to do single payer, it needs to be done correctly.
Yeah. And my thing is, where I fall with healthcare is I've always been when Obama did Obamacare, my position was he had a supermajority in the House and Senate, and they had the White House.
Yep.
Obamacare didn't go far enough. They should have gone straight into a single payer. Then.
Yep.
Now, people say, oh, well, it would cost so much. And I look at it like this. So I have my health insurance I pay for my family. I pay X amount per paycheck for health care. And then my employer pays additional, and that's the total cost to insure my family. So if that's the cost, I'm not talking about free. Someone's going to have to pay for this. The money, nothing's free. It comes from somewhere. Mm-hmm. So if I'm paying, say my total family cost for health insurance is $1,000 a month, okay, which probably isn't unreasonable. If the total cost is $1,000, whether it goes to Blue Cross Blue Shield, or whether it goes to Cigna or Kaiser, or whether it goes to Medicare, Medicaid, Medicare for all, I don't really care. As long as, like you said, as long as it's done right. And then, because still the total cost hasn't changed for me at all.
Right.
Now, let's take it a step further. So say I'm paying $1,000 for my family. And then to get to, so another family that has nothing, if I have to pay an extra $100 a month to make that happen, I'll do it. And the thing is, it's not, I'm not trying to sound like a hero, but if $100 makes it so that someone can go see a doctor, stay out of an emergency room and gum that all up, which is another place that they go, then I'm all for it. I don't see where anyone wouldn't be. I'm not looking at it like, oh, well, I pay for it. You should too. Some people can't.
Right.
Now, is healthcare a right? I don't really go that far, because to me, to make healthcare right, that means I'm forcing somebody else to perform a service.
Right.
But they're going to be compensated for it. But like any other government program, it just gets so gunked up and full of nonsense that it can if it can be done right and efficiently, which it can be because the private companies are doing it now. Now, the private companies, I've always thought that a profit motive and a patient care motive don't belong together. Because at some point, now I remember with Obamacare that everyone said there's going to be death panels and this and that.
Right.
They're going to kill grandma. Grandma is always getting killed, whether it's COVID killing grandma or the death panels killing grandma.
Grandma's getting screwed.
Right. So my grandma did pretty good. But in any case, like that's all, but that's just hyperbole is what they're saying. But if you look at something where what is the insurance company's motive? What's the CEO of the insurance company's motive? To maximize shareholder profits.
Correct.
It's not to provide the best patient care. So maybe that is a role of government where a private company is thinking about making money. And if you think of it, if you really wanted to get cold and calculating with it, think of it like a car. Eventually, you don't put money into that car anymore because it's not worth putting money into it. So once grandma's 75 years old, you know what? She's had a good run. The private insurance company, like, yeah, we're not really doing that. One of the things I had was when I was I was younger, my doctor put me on phentermine to lose weight. So, but insurance didn't cover it because they said that me being fat was a pre-existing condition. But being fat causes a whole bunch of other things.
Right.
Like heart attacks,
Hypertension,
diabetes, you name it.
A lot of stuff.
So I was telling my doctor about it. I said, this is ridiculous. And I had to go in for a follow-up, and I had to pay the full till because as a pre-existing condition. So I said, this is kind of messed up. I said, so insurance company doesn't want to pay it. She said, yep, that's a pre-existing condition. I said, well, I don't have diabetes yet. She goes, nope, and if you get diabetes, I'll pay for that. Yeah. So they'd rather cut my foot off for diabetes than to prevent that from happening. She goes, yep. She goes, actually, I'll take it a step further. They're hoping something else kills you first.
Right.
And it was like, damn, but I can't help but think that's how it actually is.
Well, I wish, this is where we talked about government messaging before, how awful it is. But what if you did single payer, but you added in the fact that the single payer system could negotiate these drug prices? Mm-hmm. And let's just say the savings from that alone would cover half this cost. Then on top of that, and I know this is going to sound against that government ethos you talked about, maximizing shareholder wealth. Problem is that you're maximizing your profit off of government subsidized program. Mm-hmm. So like all these health systems, think about it. Who is the biggest source of revenue for health systems? Senior citizens,
Medicare,
right? Medicare,
yeah.
Medicaid. The uninsured, Medicaid, and senior citizens, Medicare. And sometimes senior citizens have Medicaid anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to make your huge profits off the government spending anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Normally, I would not go down this route. I think businesses, free market, charge what you can charge. People will pay what they have to pay. Or supply and demand, all that fun stuff. However, you're talking about healthcare. You're making your money off the people. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to negotiate drug prices, and I want to cap your profits at 20%. Just because you're going to get a majority of your money from the people's bank account, doesn't mean you get to charge whatever the heck you want to anymore. I'm sorry, that's the business. This is the business you chose.
Yeah,
you didn't choose to go into the automobile industry.
Yeah, go sell car insurance.
Right, sell car insurance.
Yeah,
and I'm also not. I know other people would say, well, I don't want to pay. I shouldn't have to pay for health insurance if I don't want to. Well, the retort to that is, well, you have to pay for auto insurance.
Yeah,
that's a requirement.
I don't have to drive.
But then we also talked about the COVID shot. Well, I don't want people to be mandated to get the COVID shot, right? So this isn't cut and dry.
Yeah.
I guess my thing is, if you're going to make your money off the government teat, you now don't get to maximize shareholder wealth.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So let's say you had to cap profits at 15 or 20% on these health insurance companies. So we're still going to use the private health insurance model with basically the government covering the premiums.
Yeah.
And maybe we should have low copays, right? I don't know. I'm sure smarter people than me can figure that part out.
Yeah.
Whether there should be copays or not. But essentially, if you can cover the cost with negotiated drug prices that you couldn't do before, and capping the profits of the health insurance companies, and the pharmacy benefit managers. What if now health insurance only for a family of four, or family of four costs $500 a month, family of five is $600-$700 a month, and and this is another thing, it can be employer subsidized. So even though my health insurance for my family of four could cost $500, well, if my employer, as a benefit to me, could say, well, we're going to cover $400 of that for you.
Yeah.
So you cover $100 a month, or we'll split it in half with you. You pay $200 a month, we'll pay $200, whatever it is, whatever the premium is, your employer can now. It's just basically another benefit that your employer can provide to you. So instead of having employer provided health insurance, now it's just a matter of you and your employer figuring out who's going to pay this premium.
Yeah.
To the health insurance company that's being subsidized by the federal government. Okay. What if I said all of those costs would be covered just in the savings alone?
Yeah.
Now, nobody's saying, most of the right is saying, well, you shouldn't have to have health insurance. Well, if it's this cost effective, I think a lot of that goes away.
Yeah. And I can't think of anyone who, outside of someone who's just independently wealthy and doesn't care, is like, nope, don't want health insurance. You know, like, oh, my job offers it, don't want it. Sorry, don't want it.
Right.
You know, I can't think of anyone that really falls in that pool. And then there's some other interesting things. There's the, it's almost like a subscription service where you pay your.
Yeah, there's a clinic down in Annapolis that does that.
Yeah, what do they call that?
Evolve Medical. I think,
yeah,
down there.
And then essentially you're paying them. You're paying for your primary care, so you pay them a flat monthly fee. Whatever sort of care you need is covered by it.
Well, and some of them do the pay per visit model.
Yeah.
So like down at Evolve, I think for like a well visit, it's $90.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever looked at your EOB? A well visit, these doctors are usually charging you $240, and then whatever the insurance company negotiated, that's what you pay.
Yeah.
Well, Evolve says, look, Blue Cross Blue Shield, they pay $90 for a visit. So we'll just charge you $90 for a visit. We're not going to bill insurance. You pay the $90.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, but you're not paying premiums. You're not paying copays. It's a per visit.
Yeah. There's a whole administrative function that you no longer have to deal with.
Right.
There's the coding, all that crap that they don't have to pay someone to do anymore.
Correct.
That they're now just getting the $90 without having to pay someone to figure that out for them.
Yep. It's a neat model.
Yeah. And I think it works for a young single dude, young single girl, healthy, you know, it works for them. And why not explore that option? So I think that kind of satisfies the right wing, market base. Okay, you don't want to do that? Well, then do this. That's like your minimum coverage.
Yeah, but I still think at the same time, though, if you the whole idea behind Obamacare was, well, we're going to make it more affordable. Well, it never got to be more affordable because the single payer option never was there to force the private insurers to push that price down.
Yeah.
And never mind the fact now when you put them all in one pool, you know, in the rural areas, and this is where the biggest problem was, in the rural areas where you only had one company providing health insurance. Well, you still might only have one health provider providing insurance, but the entire country is kind of helping to subsidize the extra cost in these areas. But again, though, if the cost is low enough for the people in the major metropolitan areas, like I said, if it's only like $500 a month, and your employer can help split the cost with you. I mean, if you said, look, I can get you coverage for a family of four for $250 a month if your employer chips in half, I think everyone would say, good, I'm in.
Yeah.
But that's not what was happening. I mean, some of these small businesses, they were having to pay like $20,000 a year for health insurance. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So like I said, though, for me, I'm in favor of single payer if single payer is done right, which is the big caveat there.
Yeah,
if it's done right. So we ran really long on both of those. So this might end up being a 3-part show.
Yeah, who knows?
We'll try and buzz through some of these other ones. So like the finance and budget, I think this kind of goes along with what we just said about healthcare, at least on my end. I want it done right. I think and this fits into kind of like the military industrial complex. A lot of the money from the government, a lot of the programs, I believe, are military and healthcare, Medicare, Medicaid. Those are the two big ones.
You got Social Security, which
Social Security,
to me they kept raiding the pot. It's supposed to be self-sustaining.
So they're not really. So they're not exactly raiding it. What they did with Social Security was the government borrowed the money from Social Security. The problem is they were paying Social Security an interest rate of a T-bill, so like 1%.
Yeah.
Now, as another example of how the Social Security system could have worked, look at something like a CalPERS, which is the California pension system, and the New York pension system. They're allowed to invest the money into the stock market and other markets. They can invest in bonds and stocks. They're basically like a really large institutional investor. So they can go in, even if they just put money into bonds, they can earn 6%.
Yeah.
Now think about that. The lowest return they could probably do is 6% on bonds, which is relatively safe.
Yeah.
That's 6 times the return that Social Security is currently getting at 1% or under. Like that's great. Like think about it.
Yeah.
They could be growing it, and think about that stretch across 20 years.
Oh yeah.
Like 6 times the money times 20 years. That's ridiculous amount of money that Social Security wasn't allowed to accumulate.
Yeah.
And think about it, and that compounds too. 6% per year they lost, or I guess the difference is 5% per year they lost. So think of it this way: Social Security, because they couldn't invest in the market or other investment type vehicles, they lost a minimum of 5% per year.
Yeah.
Compounding. And so that's why Social Security is in the state it's in. It's not because the idea of Social Security was actually quite good.
Yeah.
But again, government done wrong screwed it up.
Yeah.
Like the Social Security system itself didn't get screwed. Congress screwed it.
Yeah.
Because they decided, whoa, we're just going to borrow from this pot of money, and because we're the government and it's our money, we're just going to borrow at the cheapest rate possible.
Yeah.
Rather than having someone else buy our debt at 1%. Like they were going to pay the 1 and 1.5%, 2% anyway.
Yeah.
Why did you make the American people earn it? That crap interest rate. Like China, India, all these countries are willing to buy our debt.
Yeah.
But no, we're going to make Joe in West Virginia earn that 1.5%, and we're going to just squash the fund because of this. It didn't have to be that way. And again, this is government done wrong. But
So-
I'm also not a fan. I guess when we're talking about the military industrial complex, it's a jobs program. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah. It's an inefficient jobs program.
Sure. I mean, you pay Raytheon, Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, who are the other ones? Northrop, all like
BAE Systems, all these companies.
they get these huge contracts. Shareholders get boost up the profits and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And in exchange, America gets 70,000, 80,000 jobs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
that's the trade-off.
Yeah. And then they use this equipment. So I've often said, for the cost of, I think the B-2 Spirit was like $2 billion per aircraft. So yeah, we've used them in combat, and they've, dropped bombs in some far-flung place in the world. But the cost of that equipment, of maintaining it, say we didn't buy 100 of them. I'm not sure how many we have. Say we just bought 50 of them. So you're looking at $100 billion that have been spent elsewhere, rather than being spent on these airplanes.
So here's a stat for you. The United States spends the amount of money that the United States spends on its military is equal to the next 7 countries combined.
Yeah, and like 6 of them are our allies.
Yep. So did we really need to spend that much money? Now, again, though, a lot of it is a jobs program. We're building it so that Americans have jobs.
Yeah.
But now you're talking about like kind of a socialist type system, or socialism type system, or communism. I don't know which ism it is, but it's basically taxpayer money going to make sure that other taxpayers have money. But it's a weird thing, because every time like the government spends the money, Raytheon, whatever, takes 20%. Joe Blow gets his 20 grand a year, but then he's got to pay 15 of it back to the government.
Yeah.
So the government gets what, 15 cents back on the dollar for that. Now, don't worry, they get a tangible asset, but
right. Well, then let's not forget that that equipment is then used to deliver some piece of ordnance somewhere that is also built by one of these jobs.
Yeah.
So rather than constructing something here, you're just blowing a hole into dropping it on some poor dude's mud hut somewhere. Bombing people back in the Stone Age already live in the Stone Age.
Right.
So it's an inefficient way, in my opinion, and Jimmy, I stole this from Jimmy Dore, but it's like the most inefficient way to jobs program there is. We could have been using that to actually be constructive here.
Right.
Now, I'm not anti-military at all. I think that the deterrent factor of the most powerful fighting force ever assembled is enormous. But if we're spending as much money as the next 7 nations combined, well, let's just make it the next 2 combined.
Right.
I don't see, and we also don't need to be all over the world being the policeman.
Right. A lot of that money, though, was also spent to kind of make Russia poor.
Yeah, and it worked
during the Cold War.
Yeah.
And it worked, but we didn't stop spending though. After
kept
that
going.
happened, we just kept going.
Yeah.
And look, do I have a solution to this? Probably not.
Yeah.
Because there is a domino effect when you start removing some of this money.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that should be it needs to be addressed in some manner. And I think they've tried to here and there. I guess when some of the new Navy ships got a little bit too expensive, they said, wait.
Yeah.
Let's cut this back a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's still a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a good solution to this other than, look, maybe can we spend less on some of this stuff? But the problem is once you start spending less, then some of the jobs go away.
Yeah.
Right.
Or do the jobs go away, or do just shareholder profits go down?
Well, the jobs go away.
Yeah.
They're not cutting they're not cutting that shareholder profit.
Right.
They're
silly me.
Yeah, come on now. Yeah. See, you want CEOs to do the right thing? No. Can't have that. So yeah, I fiscally responsible. Unfortunately, that's gone out the window. It's just not going to happen. I wish it would happen, but it's not going to. We kind of touched on education in the last episode, and again, we're running along on this too. But education, we both kind of talked about school choice. Once you start doing school choice, though, you erode the public school funds because you're basically leaving the worst performing kids, the poorest kids in these now public schools that are getting less funding because all the vouchers and stuff are going to better schools with the kids that want to learn or whatever their situation is. I don't blame kids in any stretch of the imagination. I mean, at some point, yeah, the kids need to take responsibility for themselves, but at the same time, some of them are just raised in crap homes, and
yeah, I mean,
there's not much you can do about that.
Yeah, and you're not gonna save everyone. I think it would related to this subject, but a bit of a departure from what we discussed last time, is getting into the free college and the free community college for all and this sort of thing, where this is something where I fall pretty hard right on. The thing with colleges is that people say, oh, you need to have a college degree. Well, you need to have a college degree to get jobs in a degree required field. But if you go and major in art history, don't complain that you can't get hired somewhere, that your career as a social media influencer isn't going the way you thought it was going to be, and you're working as a barista. I paid my student loans off. So now my wife still has hers, so I'm kind of 50-50 on that. If they said, hey, we're going to pay your student loans off, well, I paid mine off, but let's get hers.
So we're in the same boat. Like I don't have any student loans. My wife does. She worked for 10 years in the school system. Mm-hmm. Tried to get her loans forgiven from the public school loan forgiveness program.
Mm-hmm.
And that's in the news right now. As far they basically said it only went out like 3% of people got their loans paid off, and everyone else got denied. Well, she was one that got denied over some bull snuff. Just it was. She didn't have the right type of loan.
Yeah.
And so we had to refinance the loan into a loan that was the right type of loan. Mm-hmm. But now we have to make 10 more years of payments on it.
Oh, Jesus.
So we paid on this thing for 10 years.
Yeah.
Thinking that in 10 years we could get it forgiven because she worked in the public schools.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, she didn't have the right type of loan and she wasn't on the right type of repayment plan.
Yeah.
But nobody said that to her.
Right. Yeah, why bother?
Yeah. So, but as far as free education goes, I'm of the mindset of this. And private industry does this. They'll hire a kid out of high school and say, look, we'll pay for your college, but you owe us 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm of the same mindset. Let's say we offer free community college education. It has to be in one of these 7 need areas.
Yeah.
Where whatever survey shows that there is a need for either HVAC techs, nurses, diesel mechanics. I don't care what it is.
Coding, right? Whatever IT stuff is going on.
Sure. And either the employer pays for that
mm-hmm.
to the community college through a private-public partnership, or in the situation like nurses or whatever, have the federal government pay for the community college for the 2-year nursing degree.
Yeah.
That nurse now has to go work for the VA
mm-hmm.
for 5 years. I don't know. I'm flexible on the agreement.
Yeah.
But my thing is, I'm not opposed to someone getting their college education paid for.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to get it paid for, you are now going to either do some type of public service in that field.
Yeah.
It's going to be in one of 7 to 10 fields that are at need.
Mm-hmm.
And you then have to put in your time until you're a free agent. Yeah. Basically.
Or my other thought would be, because a lot of the rationale between the public the free college is that, well, high school kids come out of high school and they can't find employment with really good employment with a high school degree, a high school diploma alone. Well, then let's look at what we're teaching them in high school, and maybe we need to, because the public education system was designed essentially to train people to be factory workers. Well, there's no factory workers anymore, so maybe let's look at what we're teaching kids in high school, and alter it, change it a little bit so that it's more applicable to real world skills that you can actually utilize outside of school. Maybe make high school a year longer. I don't know. Have an option year, like a red shirt year,
right,
for high school. Oh, you redshirted, and then when you're done, you have your 2-year degree.
I know in Canada they have a grade 13.
Yeah.
So their high school goes through.
Yeah.
Grade
and then
13.
in France, the way school works there is, I think when you turn 15, everyone takes a test, mm-hmm. and then that test kind of determines whether you're going to go into the trade track or the university track.
Right.
And I don't know if a test is right, but kind of give people the option, like, hey, you like working with your hands, you're good. Okay, well, why don't you go into the trades track? You come out of high school, you have a marketable skill, rather than, oh, I came out of high school, now I need to go and get trained in something else just to be employable. So, because we're already spending the money in the high schools.
Right.
So if there are kids that come out of high school, they've taken AP classes, they have a year of college knocked out, and they're already.
Yeah. And there used to be the old VOTEC or BOCES program mm-hmm. for kids that wanted to look into mechanics, being a mechanic, HVAC, whatever. I don't think those are as prevalent as they used to be.
Yeah, so this county has 2, Cat North and Cat South. Mm-hmm. So for so long it was looked down. I know when I was in high school, it was looked down upon.
Well, it is, and I don't think outside of the low income areas, mm-hmm. I don't think the school counselors bring it up as much. So I don't think some kids even know about it.
Yeah.
Like for example, in your more affluent areas around here, like at South River, in Broadneck, Severna Park, I don't think it's even brought up that much to these kids. So some of these kids might want to do that stuff, but they don't even know the options available to them.
Oh yeah.
Now, to me, that's something that needs to be fixed, but they need to make kids more aware of their options.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like school choice goes and whatnot, when we're talking about that, I don't think you can do that without eroding the public school system so much. But there definitely needs to be some kind of accountability at these local schools.
Yeah.
Like an independent auditor of some sort.
Ombudsman, maybe.
Something.
Yeah.
Something needs to be done there because too many inner city schools just fail the kids miserably. Yeah. And it's not a lack of funding. And we talked about that.
And I also think for, when you get into education, and then we talked about budget and finance earlier, but, so if you improved high schools and then looked at the cost of college, I mean, the cost of these colleges are charging is astronomical. And they do it because they can, because it's all bankrolled by taxpayer money. Yeah. So you get your student loans. It's government money that comes through a third party, through a middleman that manages the loan, that then goes and gives it to these colleges to spend on God knows safe spaces and nonsense and grievance walls. So
we've got a whole nother podcast there about why college students think their opinions matter.
Yeah, but let's get it down to teaching kids how to do something, educating people, and not stadiums and coffee bars and all this other nonsense.
All right, we've got about 6 more topics here. I think we can bust them out in about 15 minutes. I know that some of these are really big, but I think we're going to bust these quick. Guns and Second Amendment.
Oh, that's my thing.
All right.
So, I fall hard right on this one. My main argument for it is that I don't like to erode rights. So, when the Second Amendment's gone, what then goes after that? So, if you're not a Second Amendment fan, if you're not a gun person at all, you should still be concerned about it, simply because when the Second Amendment goes away, so that's one gone. So then what's the next right that they decide they don't like?
Right. That's one part of it, though.
Yeah. When it comes to gun control itself, look at the cities that have if gun control the way that that is legislated actually worked, the homicide rate in Chicago would be 0.
Well, I want to know the stat. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's out there because I don't think it would look good for the liberal leaning people. Of the murders by gun in the United States, how many are done with a legally owned gun versus an illegally owned gun?
Yeah.
Now, here's my if the number is overwhelmingly the gun was owned legally, okay, then obviously we got to fix some gun laws, in my opinion. However, I don't think that's the case. I think a majority, and I'm gonna go on a limb here. I'm going to guess that 75% of homicides via gun are by illegal guns, purchased illegally,
obtained, possessed
with
illegally.
The serial number scratched off.
Yeah. If you're to look at all of and I'm going to take out. There's a charge. It's called it's like use of a firearm in commission of a crime of violence. I'm going to take that one out. Okay. I guarantee you that every single murder case out there, there's gonna with a firearm. That gun was either obtained, possessed, modified, produced illegally. There was some law that's already on the books that was already violated that didn't work.
Right.
So, and the thing is, you could outlaw guns tomorrow. You can say, you know what, tomorrow all guns are banned, and you know what, there's still gonna be 50 people shot in Chicago tonight.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. That it doesn't work. So, my thing is, you're just chasing it around.
It's not going. Creating more stringent rules for guns is not going to solve the problem right now because the guns that are doing the harm are purchased illegally anyway. Yeah. And they're not purchased illegally at Walmart.
No.
They're not purchased illegally at Cabela's. They're purchased illegally from the trunk of some dude's car who drove them from Atlanta to Chicago because guns are cheaper in Atlanta than they are in Chicago, and you can make a quick $200 on a handgun. Mm-hmm. And that's not me saying that. Like a liberal news organization called Vice actually did a report on that.
Mm-hmm. So their idea is, well, let's make guns illegal everywhere.
Right, but that's not going to matter.
No.
Because they're buying them from they're going to get them from somewhere.
Yeah.
If any, criminals are resourceful people. I mean, call them what you want, but they're very resourceful people. Yep. They will get their merchandise from someone somewhere.
So and let's look back. You know, if you look back, say 80 years ago, you could buy a BAR. So a BAR is a Browning automatic rifle. That was the squad automatic weapon in the Second World War. Okay, so essentially, it would be similar to you might be familiar with the M60 or the M249. So it's the squad automatic weapon. So that would be like today, if I could just go on Amazon and buy an M249 and just have it. But 80 years ago, there weren't homicides all over the place.
Right.
So there's another decay in society that's causing this. And I think you'd make a much better impact in people's lives if you were to attack those issues rather than just go after the gun. Because if you took all the guns away from people, they'd stab each other. Right. Or hit each other with baseball bats. So you're going to take baseball bats away. It's just, you're going after the wrong thing.
Criminal's going to criminal.
Right.
Right. And I'm also not, I mean, like, some of the super right 2A people, though, they go a little too far.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, dude, you don't need a cannon. You know what I'm saying? Now, I'm not saying it's even a matter of need. I get it. Some of these guns are collectibles and toys for some people. I get that. But some of these things are ridiculous that's going around out there. But at the same time, it's not like people are getting shot with cannons.
Right.
You know, like that toy, like that cannon toy that some dude, no one's pulling out the 50 cal.
No,
more
people are killed.
People up.
More people are killed with hammers every year than AR-15s.
Sure. Yeah,
and the AR-15 is the one that gets because it's the big bad black rifle, and it gets a lot of the ire just because it's an easy target.
Right.
So those things, the most horrific incidents are using those, but an M1 Garand will do the same thing.
Yeah, and. Now, recently, there have been some liberal folks on YouTube that have been trying to like show how easy it is to buy a gun, and every single one of them, it's not easy to buy a gun. They all had to wait the 3-day waiting period. They all had to wait for their background check. Like putting more laws on the books. The current laws, if they're enforced correctly through legit retailers. They work.
Yeah.
You know, the people got to pass their background check. People got to, they got to wait their 3 days in most states. In some states, it's even more. Putting more laws in the books for guns isn't going to solve the problem. It's going to, it's going to fire up your base on the left side. It's going to fire them up. But it's also going to fire up the right side.
Yep.
I guess my point is that for me, it's always been guns don't kill people. People with guns kill people. Solve the people problem.
Yeah.
The criminal problem. The illegal gun problem. That's the stuff you need to. I mean,
and then when you catch,
I find it hysterical. Our local police department, they love to snap pictures for Facebook to show the drug busts. What about the illegal guns?
Yeah.
Why don't you go try and find some of them?
Yeah. And then the thing is with the motives. You know, the violence that's associated with all this, when you catch people with these guns, put them in jail.
And leave them there.
Don't let them out.
Right.
But what they're doing is they're saying, oh, we need more gun laws. And then people are caught on the existing gun laws and, you know, they let them out. So don't let them out. Keep them in jail.
Right.
You know, then they're not a problem anymore. So the criminal doesn't care about the law. They've already shown that they don't care about the law. So
Correct.
Making another one's not going to help. And then when you do catch them, have some consequences attached to it. Don't feel sorry for them. And then solve the people problem, like you said. Let's attack the root cause and maybe make an improvement in people's lives.
Yep. All right. So we're good with guns and the Second Amendment. At least for you and I. I'm sure people hate us for it right now. I remember Dave Chappelle doing the haters ball. hate. All right. Anyway, that's my little Dave Chappelle throw in there. All right. Gay marriage.
Well, I'm fine with it.
Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right? I don't care.
Yeah, no, and the thing is, if a church doesn't want to marry you, then that's the church's prerogative. There are other ways to go about doing it.
So I'm always the state or the county or the local government should not be involved in who marries who.
Right.
I think, in my opinion, every single certificate of, actually, I would even say call it a civil union certificate for tax purposes, because that's really what it is.
Yeah.
It's a tax thing. Like,
Yeah.
So you can file taxes together and lower your tax bill.
Well, yeah, there's other things where
call it a civil union certificate for everybody.
For everybody. And here's the thing, like if you have 2 men or 2 women who are married, and they're in love with each other and they spend their lives with one another, and then, or say they're not married because they're living in an area where they can't. But I think the Supreme Court kind of settled that, put that one to bed. But they've been together, deeply care for one another. Then prior to them being able to get married, like the other one's dying, they couldn't go visit them in the hospital. Like it's heartbreaking.
That's rough. Yeah.
And so I'm 100% in support of it.
Well, and my counter argument to the religious right is, look, 50% of marriages end in divorce. Mm-hmm. And 50% of marriages between men and women end in divorce. You really think that saying 2 men or 2 women shouldn't get married? It's a violation of the sanctity of marriage.
Right.
Get out of it. Come on now.
Like it's good. That's the thing that's gonna bring that institution down. Yeah, it's pretty much on its way down anyway. Yeah. So
it's like, come on now. Like you're not gonna tell me it violates the sanctity of marriage when you got the last president was married 3 times.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be, it was like a hero of the religious right. Mm-hmm. Like, come on now. Like, let's be honest with each other with this.
Yeah.
Like, your whole, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Who cares? Listen, the religious right can't be all about religious freedoms and staying out of people's business and
But then wanting to be absolutely in everyone's business in this instance.
I don't want to. The government shouldn't be in your business, but I'm going to be in your bedroom.
Yeah.
Get out of here with this nonsense. Like that's hypocrisy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, don't wrong. I could be a very hypocritical person. I get that. There's some things I say that don't make sense, whatever. But this is like, look, I don't want any say in what 2 people want to do together for their life. To me, I don't want people telling me what to do. So I don't want to tell them what to do.
Have you ever seen those statement flags where it says, in this house we believe? And the one thing is love is love. I'm on, like, if 2 people love each other regardless of their equipment, like, God bless you. There's so much hate in this world to begin with. Like, no, I'm fully in support of it.
But I am against trying to trap people for their religious beliefs, though. Mm. If that's their religious belief and they don't think that two men should be married or 2 women should be married, I don't feel like there should be a crusade against them to try and get them to conform to society.
Yeah.
Like that whole cake baker case out in Colorado. Like, I'm sorry, leave the dude alone.
Yeah.
Like, he was willing to make you a cake, but he didn't want to put dong and balls on there.
Yeah.
Which you tried to make him do. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, he wasn't against making you a cake, which is what all the media wanted people to think.
Yeah.
Like, oh, he was anti-gay. He didn't want... No, he just didn't... As a cake baker who can choose to put what he wants on cakes, decided he didn't want to put a dick and balls on a cake. Mm-hmm. Or 2 dudes on top of a cake. That's his right as an artist, as a baker, and whatever. Yeah. Like, you can't force a painter to paint flowers.
Yeah.
We talked about this in a different podcast. It's like, look, you went after that dude on purpose. Mm-hmm. Rather than just, like, look, if you want people to let you live, you got to let other people live too.
Yeah.
You got to leave some people alone. Rather than going after them because they don't believe what you want them to believe in. It is kind of what it is in that point. It's like you can't come off holier than thou when you're not holier than thou.
Yeah.
All right. So, but again, though, I'm for people doing whatever they feel necessary. I don't think the government should be in marriage certificates.
Yeah.
No, screw that. Any two people who want one can get a civil, what is it? A civil union certificate.
Yeah.
For tax purposes and for health benefit reasons, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Power of attorney, whatever. Yeah,
all that stuff. And I think there's a compromise to be had there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I'm sure we'll get flamed for that one too.
Yeah, whatever.
By the way, I still want to get invited to the gay wedding.
Me too.
I haven't seen an invitation come across my mailbox yet. Probably because I haven't given out my address. But hey, if you know who I am and you're gay and you're getting married, please. My wife and I would love to come. And Mike and his wife want to come too. Okay. All right. Moving on. We're on a little bit long, but we're going to keep going. Let's see. You want to do Israel? I really don't think food is a big thing. I don't even know if we were going to... That's not a major topic, is it?
Yeah.
Food. I guess my only thing with food was... Look, I don't care what these farms put on the food, but I think they should have to label it so that people know what they're putting in their body.
Yep.
All right. Israel, right to defend themselves.
Yeah, so I'm fully on board with the right to defend themselves. I think Israel gets a bad rap from certain factions of the media, pretty much all of it. Yeah, it's one of those things where I used to think that it was, Palestinians and Israel were like second-class citizens. That's not really how it is. So I've kind of turned on that because I used to be like, why are we supporting them and this and that? But if you look at some of the peace agreements that were brokered between Israel and the UAE, Israel and, was it Bahrain?
Well, I think Israel and Jordan have one too.
Yeah.
But that was Israel and Egypt and Jordan.
Yeah.
Israel, Egypt, Israel, Jordan. Those were two of the first.
Yeah.
And then recently was UAE.
Mm-hmm.
Libya?
Libya,
It was another country in Africa. I don't know. It was another country in Africa, I think. They just had there were 3 or 4 of them that just happened.
So no, I think Israel has a right to exist. Israel has a right to defend itself. I saw a thing of if Israel laid down its arms and said we're not fighting anyone, what would happen to Israel?
They get blown away by Iran.
Yeah. If the rest of that part of the world laid down their arms and said they weren't fighting Israel anymore, what would happen?
Problem is you have Iran and Hezbollah saying that that they don't believe Israel has a right to exist and they're going to blow them off the face of the planet. So you have that problem.
And that part of the world has been fought over the Crusades went through there. The Romans were there. So it's been...
And World War II the aftermath of World War II, and essentially what created the state of Israel, didn't help things.
Yeah.
It's kind of like... I just watched a video on how the borders in the U.S. were made. And a lot, like they said, like a lot of them were made, like for example, Virginia, West Virginia. Mm-hmm. The border was created solely so that there was one. The people in West Virginia wanted to remain part of the Union.
Yep.
Virginia wanted to remain wanted to go secede, but the border was kind of created just haphazardly at the time, and I would imagine that when Israel was created, the original borders that were created are not the ones that were from today. Israel had to fight, and they pushed the borders out a little bit because essentially they gave them a piece of land that was indefensible at the time.
Because they went and it was the Gaza Strip in the West Bank, I believe, was a territory that they seized.
Golan Heights too.
Yeah. And Israel, there were the entire Arab world attacked Israel at once, and they always beat them back. Because they were using American weapons. They were using, the first when Israel was first existed, they were flying Messerschmitt Bf 109s. Yeah. So they've been, they're using French Mirages. They've been using a whole bunch of different equipment from different places. The thing is, Israel is we're trying to spread democracy in Iraq and here and there, but Israel is a democracy, the only functioning democracy in that part of the world.
Yeah. I get it. I understand, though, after World War II, they displaced a lot of Palestinians, though. Mm. So I understand that part of it. And that's why I kind of brought up the drawing of the borders at the time. It was done kind of, I think it was probably done a little haphazardly, probably. Was there a better solution? Probably. Mm-hmm. But the fact remains is, okay, this is what it is now. Now, since then, though, I mean, you're talking, what are we, 70, 80 years on from the time Israel was created? And Israel kind of expanded its own borders.
Yeah.
I'm kind of the opinion that wars get fought, to the victor go the spoils, right? If the Arab world wanted to take it back, and they did, and they tried, and they did, and they failed, which they did, well, at some point, to the victor go the spoils, and this is what it is now.
Yeah. And I don't believe those territorial gains were through offensive action.
No, they were attacked first. They did not. I don't think they weren't the offensive party.
They weren't the aggressor.
But when they got attacked and they ended up pushing out their boundaries,
they never gave it back.
Right.
I'm cool with that.
And look, I am cool with that because to the victor go the spoils. Look, you attacked, you got beat. They took more of your land, and now you're pissed.
Right.
Well, you attacked in the first place, and I get it. The land was taken from you in the first place. Well, again, the victors of World War II decided that this is what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know the specifics of it, but somehow it happened, and it is what it is at this point. You got to accept the truth of today at some point. And you could say that about a lot of territories in the world. Yeah. I mean, at some point, wars got fought. I mean, it's almost kind of like in the United States. People are like, oh, the Native Americans, the poor Native Americans. The Native Americans lost battles. They fought wars. They lost.
Right.
And the English or the colonial powers at the time pushed out their lands.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it was right at the time to do, but to say today that you should start giving stuff back.
Right.
Because it wasn't right.
And
that's what war is. It's a tough world out there.
And those tribes weren't exactly, like, they weren't all peaceful and running around with bunny rabbits. They were fighting with each other. There were some very, fierce warriors, so, that were here. If you go even further, further south, earlier in history, the Incans, the Mayans, and the Aztecs, like, they were empires.
Yep.
And the Spanish came and, they fought and they won that war. Now the Spanish were the invader, but had the Incans and the Mayans and the Aztecs developed the technology to sail the other way and landed in Spain, probably would have done exactly the same thing. So, that's how I look at those conquests. There's always going to be war and conflict. There's always going to be a winner and a loser. So, now when you get into some of the more like Trail of Tears and that sort of stuff, like, that was awful. So giving them smallpox infested blankets and stuff to,
dirty pool.
Yeah.
I mean, look, when there's war happening, I mean, what do they say? All's fair in love and war.
Yeah.
And look, looking back on it, you're like, wow, those were some crappy people.
Yeah.
But, and I guarantee the people screaming at the radio right now are like, well, it's easy for you to say you're advocating for the winning side. I have some ancestors that were on the losing side of a really bad situation.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say what it was, but it wasn't the Holocaust. It was another genocide that happened.
Yeah.
And yes, am I bitter toward that country that did it? Yes. Am I saying that my people should have some land back? No, we lost.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I mean, you got to put your pride aside a little bit and accept the reality of today. In fact, they just lost another portion of the country that they took, I think it was like 15, 20 years ago. It is what it is. Another country that wanted it, took it. that's how this planet has kind of evolved. I mean, I'm not going to say that country needs to give it back now.
Yeah.
No, they wanted it. They took it. That's how that went. It is what it is.
Yeah, and there were pieces in Europe that were fought. The Sudetenland, went back and forth. France, Germany. It's been, all over the world. It's been going on since Homo sapiens has been walking the earth. It's been going on. So, it's nothing new.
All right, last topic. It's the biggie. Abortion. Texas just did their heartbeat bill.
Yeah.
At 6 weeks. So, I like to tell people this. I am pro-choice politically. Mostly because I don't think I should have a say in what someone else does with their life. This is another portion of where I think the Republicans kind of overstep, where they say, abortion should be illegal, but the rest of the time they're saying that the government shouldn't be in your business.
Right.
All right. So for me, in my personal life, and I talked to my wife about this. I think in my personal life, if my wife got pregnant, I would like to think that we would not go the abortion route. Even we're older, but either way, even when we were younger, I would like to think that we wouldn't go that route in our personal life. So in that regard, I could be considered pro-life, but when it comes to national mandates and national laws, I think everyone's situation is different.
Yeah.
That's why you always hear about people saying there should be exceptions for incest and rape and all that stuff. Well, what about there could be other instances. Like, I don't think we should just limit the exceptions to those. I think everyone's situation is different. And I don't think the federal government or other voting people should have a right to say what that woman should do with their body. Now, I talked with my wife when we were talking about this. She, in her opinion, it's her body. Even if I'm involved in making that baby, it should be her choice, not our choice at that point. And I can see that point of view too. I'm not completely against that. But I think as a married couple, if you're making the decision to engage in the act of possibly making a baby, I feel like it should probably be a joint decision.
Right, yeah.
But look, for the sake of my marriage and the fact I want to stay married, I'm going to say no. But I don't know. I can see her point of view.
Yeah.
I guess in my opinion, it should, pro-choice is the way I would have to vote politically. Even though in my own personal life, I wouldn't want to go that route.
Yeah. So I'm similar. I am pro-choice but anti-abortion, and mainly I don't think the government should be making those decisions. That it's a medical decision between a woman and her physician, with the caveat though that when you start thinking about it, they say, "Oh, it's just a clump of cells." Well, once that clump of cells has DNA, what makes an individual an individual? Is it DNA? Is it unique DNA that makes someone an individual? So that's kind of where, and then does the government have a right to protect its weakest citizens? Which then you say, okay, well, a little baby would be the weakest citizen, and then a baby that wasn't born yet. So it's a very hard decision. But again, I still get back to the thing where I want to remain consistent in the fact that, if you're going to go and espouse all this limited government, except there, we want the government all in that.
Right.
Everything else is limited government. Well, now you're kind of you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. Yeah. So I really kind of stay like, is it the decision that I would want to make? Absolutely not. But I don't have that. It's not a decision that I'm going to be making anyway. But yeah, I'm very. If I would try to talk someone out of it. if they were to ask my opinion on it. But as far as going and saying, oh, no, it should be outlawed, no, I don't think it should be. Again, because I don't want the government involved in that sort of intimate issue.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, it could change, too. I mean, I've got 2 daughters. Right? Who knows? Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't have... I'm not going to have I'm not going to have... I don't want to say I'm not going to have input if that situation ever arises. Because I'm sure my daughters would ask for my advice, mm-hmm. right? I don't know what I would tell them, though.
Yeah.
If that ever came around. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of avenues to think about. I mean, there's a portion of it that says, there are plenty of families that want to adopt babies.
Yep.
So it might be, look, even if you're not ready or whatever the reason being, I mean, obviously outside of a medical reason, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's very rare anyway.
Well, it could be one of those things where, maybe I would say, hey, look, maybe this is an option you want to think about. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe putting the baby up for adoption is something you want to think about. Because I do think there's a mental toll on women that have abortions.
Yeah.
A lot of guilt, right? Mm-hmm. But who am I to say that? I mean, there's probably a lot of guilt for women that put their babies up for adoption too. I mean,
yeah.
There's so much, and that's the thing. That I don't think people understand. There's so much that goes into this.
Women that get abortions that don't care.
So, look, there might be, but I don't think that's the case for a majority of women, though. They're really. I mean, I think I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe some do, but I think it's a very. I don't think it's an easy decision for any woman to make. In fact, for a lot of them, I think it's incredibly difficult. And I think there's probably some mental anguish either way. Mm-hmm. Either decision they make, right? Now I'm also, I don't think because I'm a man that I shouldn't have an opinion, right? I mean, everyone has an opinion on everything, right? But I also don't. Outside of my house, I don't think my input's going to matter to anybody. Not on that. And I don't think it should. It's an extremely private and personal decision.
Right. Yeah, right. And that's exactly where I am with it. Like, there's no reason for me to interject. If someone asks me, and we're having this discussion now, mm-hmm. but I come back to the whole, the government shouldn't be involved in it. So let's keep the government out of that. So, and it's funny, but then if you go to the other side, that
they're going to equate it to murder.
Yeah,
right. They're going to.
Well, that's where the whole protect its weakest citizens thing comes in.
Right.
So I almost think that it's something that, that's between the provider, the mother, and God. Like, let's leave it at that.
Right.
Like, let God sort that one out. So, but it's a rough one.
But politically though, screws to it. Running for office, do you run as pro-choice or pro-life?
Me, that I'll probably go as pro-choice. But I'm not going to be one of the ones that's pounding my fist on the table saying, that we're going to do abortions up until birth.
Right.
I'd
be pro-choice, understanding that it's a very nuanced topic.
Yeah. It is.
It's not black and white.
Yeah, and then I think it's also a topic that both sides use to fire up their base.
Absolutely.
That it's a medical procedure. It should be left and the Supreme Court decided on a national level. Now, if some of these states want to go and pass these laws, then sue them and fight them in court over it. But it is a federal system, so that's the states can govern themselves accordingly.
I think states that pass these laws, though, don't really understand the ramifications of them. Mm-mm. A person who wants to get an abortion is going to go get one.
Yeah.
Whether they're going to do it in the back alley.
Yeah.
Or they're going to go to another state that allows it. Mm-hmm. It's still going to happen. You're not.
Yeah.
I don't think one life is going to be saved.
Yeah. Well,
because of a different law.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't see that happening.
Yeah. And my mother had a bumper sticker or something and it said, "Keep abortion safe, legal, and rare," and that's kind of where I fall on it.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to land. So
I agree.
And then find ways to prevent it. I think Barack Obama said it, like, let's look at ways to prevent it in the first place. So
yeah. Well, that's us pretty much telling you out there, because we have gotten into politics in the past on certain things and certain topics, but we've never laid out exactly where we are in the major political topics and where we stand. And I think from what you can tell from this is that neither one of us, well, we might have some views that lean left and some views that lean right. I mean, shoot, it doesn't get much more left than single-payer healthcare, and it doesn't get much more right than pro-Second Amendment.
Yeah.
And everything in between.
Yeah.
So there is a middle. If you listen to this and you're like, hey, yeah, this makes sense, there are other people like you out there.
And you can be opposites of us on all the other, like on these, but still left on some things and right on others. You don't have to put yourself. You don't have to put yourself in a box.
That's right. I mean, that's the beauty of this country. At least it is currently, hopefully, and it remains that way. We don't all think the same. It's okay to have difference of opinion. Keep the discourse, though, at a good level. Following congresswomen into a bathroom because you don't agree with them. Protesting on their front lawn in their home because you don't agree with them. Fighting someone, shooting someone in the streets because you don't agree with them. It's not the way to go about things. We have Congress to debate things. People can debate things, but taking it to another level is not where we want to go as a society. So we hope you kind of got a greater understanding of where we stand on some topics. Maybe got some more clarity on where we stand. Not everything's black and white. But hopefully you enjoyed this podcast, and please like, subscribe, comment, share. Rate us on all the podcast platforms, even though I don't even know if that's the thing. And hopefully we didn't turn anybody off, and we see you next time.